everyone, my name is Julien Jarry and I'm a director and DP based in the Northeast, and I am here today on behalf of Adorama TV. We are here at my good friend and fellow DP John McCabe's studio in Stamford, Connecticut, just outside of New York City. In part one of this two-part series, we will be testing and directly comparing 6 of today's large format cinema cameras. Honestly, this is about as good as it gets, and we certainly don't get to see these cameras side by side every day. We have the Arri Alexa Mini LF, the Sony Venice, the red Monstro, the Canon C500 Mark II, the Sony A7siii, and the Panasonic S1H. And what we want to do today is test these cameras through a variety of scenes we've created that will hopefully translate their image, tonality, and really their essence onto the screen, so we can really get a feeling for each tool's DNA. You see, we personally want to understand the similarities and differences between these cameras so we can come to our own conclusions. Before we jump in, let's just quickly summarize our testing philosophy. I think we were relatively scientific and super controlled, so I think this is definitely going to be a really great representation and resource for all of you guys. So we diligently and accurately metered a gray card's IRE value for each specific setup. I was even joking on set that Zach was the gray card police. You know, we sort of appointed him as the gray card IRE police. He did an incredible job ensuring that each camera's exposure was identical to the last. We kept shutter speed, white balance, lens, and t-stop the same across the board for each separate set. The one thing that was slightly different across cameras was ISO. Every single one of these cameras has different sensitivities. For example, the red Monstro might read a scene at 1600 ISO, where the Venice has to read that same scene at 2500 ISO in order for that gray card to read at the same IRE value. Collectively, we decided that we were okay with the fact that one camera might be at 800 ISO, another one might be at 640 or 1280, and another one might even be at 2000. For our purposes here, we felt like it was the right decision. One final note for consistency and fairness in this test is that for every single one of the cameras, we had the corresponding Rec. 709 LUT up on their monitor, and we were exposing to that LUT. Now I'll quickly give you an overview of each one of the sets before we dive into the results. So this is our first scene. This is a good friend Carlos of mine sitting here at a desk. We're shooting this on the Tokina Vista Prime 85mm T1.5. We have a big daylight key coming across from camera left, and then we have 3 Astera Titan tubes in the background, just giving kisses of light different colors so we can then see how these sensors render different hues. And you know, when we lit this scene, we threw the Mini LF up, and I had to bump it to 3200. Just with the setup that I had lighting wise, and I actually said, well, let's just keep it at 3200 and use this scene as the quote-unquote low light scene. So that's what we did. The LF was at 3200 and everything sort of got set around that. So this is, you know, not a crazy high ISO test, but relatively speaking, this is the high ISO test of the group. So this is set 2, and you know, it's bright, but you can see it's warm and there's a lot going on here with lighting. You'll see in a moment how this really gave the sensors a run for their money. So we've got our good friend and producer here, Bevy, in the center of the table in the kitchen, and this was shot on the Tokina Vista Prime 40mm T1.5. This was definitely a fun one. And finally, scene 3. Nick gravitated towards this old elevator. There's a little bit of daylight coming in from the background, and initially I didn't want to have any ambient light in any of these tests because I didn't want light levels to change, but we moved quick enough in this test that I don't think that was much of a problem. We've got 2 Gemini light panels at this sort of green sodium vapor color just cutting across the scene. Yeah, and it's nice to see the perspective of the sensor sizes on this 25. You know, you'll see how wide that Monstro sensor is, how the other sensors act on the 25. And then you'll also see, you know, in the darkness, in the green, you know, how rich those colors get. And you'll also see what skin tone looks like under a, you know, a sodium vapor light. So one final note before we display all of these results. We know each one of these cameras is a data capturing device, and as much as we want to do color space transforms and match all of these cameras, and we need to first show you what these look like straight out of the box with the manufacturer's corresponding Rec. 709 LUT applied. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Hey, I'm Camille, and today we got to test out a whole bunch of different cameras. I think looking at a test like this, you get an idea of the higher end cameras and compare that to more of a prosumer or even consumer cameras that you might be able to grab.
I think it's important to test equipment because you get familiarized with your gear, right? And then also you figure out what your taste is, because not everybody's gonna have the same taste, right? There's no wrong or right camera to choose for whatever project you're doing.
I think it's always important to know what you're working with. It's the only way that you're gonna understand how to get the best image.
So looking for a camera in this caliber, I always look for ease of use. It's really important that when you show up, it's easy. You can do whatever you need to do with it to get the right shot every time. I think the three sets really challenged each camera in either going low light, pushing the lenses, We had different contrast ratios, something you're gonna see outside of an interview that a lot of us are doing.
I think with the cameras, it was all pretty standard fare. It was pretty much what we expected, but a lot of the cameras I haven't played with, cameras that I've wanted to actually physically be there and test, it's so minute between them. The big thing for me is like getting your hands on it and just feeling, you know, how, you know, the Venice is big. Like, yeah, it's big. The Mini LF is tiny, you know, like the Monstro is, you know, the size of every other Red. So you're kind of like seeing each ecosystem and getting to feel it, and that's like really big for me.
All right, so I alluded to it earlier, and I just can't help myself. I am by no means a professional colorist, but I am very passionate about matching cameras and sensor technology. So I did what I could in about 10 to 20 minutes, pushing and pulling curves around, and this is where it got me.
Well, folks, that does it for us today. I know I certainly learned a lot. It was so great to finally get our hands on these awesome cameras and to get that real-time side-by-side comparison that we so desired to experience for ourselves. We're interested in what you thought, and if you have any questions for any one of us, please leave them in the comments below. The truth is, it's 2021, and every single one of these cameras can be the greatest in the world for you and for your project, and there is really nothing to complain about. We have so many incredible tools at our fingertips, and it's an amazing time to be a filmmaker. If you like this video, and you'd love it if we could make more just like this one, give us a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to Adorama TV. We will see you in the next one.